Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast, presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Josh from MitsuTimes. Today, my guest is Eric Englert. He is the owner and driver of the V8 all-wheel drive 3000 GT that I'm sure you've seen. It's been all over the internet and back and forth and around the world a million times and posted in so many magazines. How you doing today, Eric?
Doing well, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, sir. It is absolute honor. I've been following your car back in the 4G63 swap era. So it's great to get to talk to you and to be able to pick your brain. I was doing some research on this, and I've seen that this S3 magazine has that your car is at over 15 different setups in
it. Yeah, don't quiz me on all of those. I had to. I probably could go setup by setup and the problems. Some self-induced. Some experimentation and some I had some machine shop problems before I started working with my buddy Don at CAC Performance.
So let's talk about the V8 3000 GT. It's unfortunately met its demise, but luckily you're still good to go and you're far from walking away from the Mitsubishi community. So let's talk about the last setup that was in that 3000 GT.
Yeah, so its final form was a Dart. It was LS based, aftermarket iron block from Dart, 388 cubic inches. Which is a stock stroke LS. Obviously, aftermarket crank. I did a Dart billet crank. They have a relatively inexpensive option for that with center counterweight, which is pretty cool. Iron H-beams or steel H-beams, iron block, and some diamond pistons. Nothing too exotic. It was hydraulic cam from Comp Cam that was spec'd by Force Performance to match my turbo setup. And I had twin 7875s from Force Performance. And fuel, I was back and forth, sometimes E85, flex fuel, pump gas driving around, and methanol.
Heck yeah.
So that was the basics. Depending upon what kind of surface we were on, anywhere from 25 to 35 pounds of boost, and anywhere from approximately 1,400 wheel to 1,600 wheel horsepower.
And the all-wheel drive was provided from the Chevy Astrovan drivetrain, is that right?
Well, no, that was a failed experiment. We had a lot of failed experiments. So drivetrain, the car started rear-wheel drive when I was LS. Right. I set it up rear-wheel drive with a power glide. The size of the power glide helped to fit in the car without a lot of cutting. And then I did an aftermarket chain drive transfer case from Racing in the Dirt.
Okay.
And they do Racing in the Dirt, the name. And so it was, big tractor tire trucks and tractors and stuff. And so it was a small option. It was full-time four-wheel drive. That was transfer case rear end. I originally started with the independent rear from the 3000 and started snapping axles like twigs, and then I broke a hub, and that was the end of that. So I put in a Ford 9-inch that was literally drug out of a junkyard from a Ford Thunderbird.
Heck yeah.
1978 Ford Thunderbird had the right width that I wanted without having to cut or extend. And Ford 9-inch center section, stock gears, stock center with just Eaton True Track and some axles. So that's the rear end. And then sending it to the front, ended up adapting a Chevy Colorado front diff, which is a 7.5-inch diff up front. had some custom axle bars made to using stock inner CV from the Colorado and stock outer CVs from Mitsubishi 3000 GT, with just custom axle bars to connect the two. And at first, it worked really well. So the Chevy Colorado, like most newer Chevy stuff, have electronic solenoid that disconnects the one axle. So what I could do was drive around. I had a switch, would switch off. The front axle was disconnected, and so it's essentially two-wheel drive because I had an open front diff, and so it's just not doing anything. So I could do a two-wheel drive burnout, flip the switch, then I'm in four-wheel drive with an open front diff. It worked really well until it stopped working, and under power, it would disconnect the axle, and it happened a couple of times at the top of the track around 130 miles an hour. And anyone that's piloted a four-wheel drive car under power that makes some power knows that you have to drive it, and your front tires may not always be pointed straight to keep the car straight. And when the four-wheel drive all of a sudden turns off with 1,500 horsepower and your wheel's not necessarily pointed all straight, it gets a little hairy. And I have some videos. So we had Family Man Racing channel on YouTube, and there's a video when we went down to Alabama for a no prep race, and at the top of the track it kicked out and my car went a little hairy at the finish line. So I ended up welding that there's like a collar, a slip collar, and so I welded that all together so it couldn't do that anymore. But then it created additional problems. Now I didn't have as much give in the system driving around, and you end up with binding everywhere, and because there's no slip, no give, and that ended up resulting in pass through the cornfields end over end. So,
well, it must say a lot about the cage in that, because it was pretty nasty looking after photos, and you said you were basically able to walk away.
Oh yeah, not even a scratch on me. A little sore for a couple of weeks, but yeah, Brad Abel, he doesn't do cages anymore. I think mine was the last one. He's another Mitsu racer. He built the cage for me when it was still 4G63 swapped.
Wow.
And then I did the rest. That was really the only thing on the car that I didn't build myself. So the front and rear subframes, the adaptation of basically bolting in a 9-inch, and then the four-wheel drive setup I all did. All of that actually, other than the binding, all of that survived the accident really, really well. So you're always a little nervous when you make the stuff yourself and not qualified to do any of it. But it worked out really well.
Good. So you've been into 3000 GTs a very long time. What originally got you into the platform in the first place?
So this goes all the way back to college, actually. So I'll start with high school. My senior year of high school, I bought a non-turbo automatic 1991 Toyota MR2, and we'll come full circle to that, I'm sure. And so that was high school. I had that part of college, and then I wanted something with a little more power, and I was looking at RX-7s, Nissan 300ZXs, etc. But living in Indiana, I went to school at Purdue, bad weather, and ended up settling on a 3000 GT for the all-wheel drive. So it was a 1991 3000 GT VR4. All of the wrong things that people would say. So it's the cast crank, 18 spline, transfer case, and we literally beat the ever-living crap out of that car. I mistakenly let my friends drive it at times. They've ramped it over little bumps in the road. We did so many four-wheel drive burnouts and donuts, anything you can think of, clutch drops, and it survived all of that. And then I met my wife when I had that car. She loved the 3000 GTs. It probably helped me land out of my league, and she loved it. We got married, started having kids, and the car had to go. So I sold that, and then after we were married, settling in for a while, started building my career, getting some money again. I was like, all right, I need to buy another one and do all the things that I wanted to do when I was in college and didn't have any money and could barely pay the gas and insurance. And so I bought the green one that was coined green bean by the locals and some racers. And so that I bought about 12 years ago, and originally was to have a fairly stock looking 3000 with all the stuff that I wanted, right? So I bought it was clean, it was stock, and I had it for about 2 weeks, and it spun a rod bearing. So it accelerated my mod list timing, and that's how I eventually met my buddy Don. I was in Arizona, and he was there as well. And he knew about cars much more than I did. I just know I liked them, but I didn't know anything about fixing them, building them, or anything. And so I dug into it, pulled the motor. I had to, of course, Google it, get on the forums, and step by step figure out how to get the motor out of the car. But I knew him at the time already, so I knew if I got into it too deep where I didn't know how to put it back together, I'd be able to pay him to bail me out. So yeah, that's how it started. And as you said, multiple different iterations, and we had some unfortunate parts selection at different times, and then I experimented with stock motors, and I had a lot of fun with it. I had a 6G74 stock 6G74 in it, making around 500 wheel, 500 torque, and eventually put a rod through the oil pan. It was the perfect. If you're going to break something, you may as well break it right. So the rod tore up everything in the motor. It actually hit the transfer case, broke the transfer case off the bell housing. So in one shot, I broke the motor, transfer case, and transmission.
Wow.
So that was fun.
That rod was a missile.
Yeah. So that was the 3000, and as we know, over time, I got more comfortable cutting into it and experimenting, and it's just been my Lego set for the last 12 years. And I pioneered the 4G63 swap. It had never been done before in the world. The reason I did that was I ended up swapping in an all-wheel drive auto 6G setup and absolutely loved it. I'd never been in a really fast automatic car before.
Yeah.
And so it was a stock trans, stock converter, tight converter with 3-liter and 14B turbos. And I was zinging it to 8,000 RPM, instantaneous shifts, and I would laugh like the Joker on Batman, like a maniac, every time it shifted.
That's awesome.
It was unbelievable. I'd never been in something that had that much traction and instantaneous shifts. So on any surface, I wasn't into racing then. It was just driving around street car, AC, and that was unfortunate because I had a local machine shop do the work on it, and come to find out the crank was just balanced completely wrong for a V6.
Oh, man.
And it had a weird vibration from the beginning, and I just kept it ran so well that I just kept running it, but eventually took out the mains, and then that's what led to the 4G. I was like, oh man, automatic, and and RPM, this is fantastic. So let's do more.
I can have everything.
Yeah, let's do more of that, and a crank that doesn't really need to be balanced like a V6 needs to be. So,
and doing some research, I was reading up how you were talking about the 3000 GT and the 1G DSM are the same wheelbase, so it just made sense. I thought that was so crazy because when you look at the 3000 GT, it looks so much bigger.
Yeah, it's bizarre. They look like such a bigger car. Now they do have a wider track width, but and then the overhangs are different, right? But the wheelbase is nearly identical, and any generation, air quotes here, of a 3000, because they're all the same chassis. Any generation of 3000 from 91 to 99 is very, very close to a 1G DSM.
That's crazy.
The design on almost every suspension component, subframe, the car itself, the wiring, everything is almost identical, but in most cases not quite. And so it doesn't just slop straight over, but it did allow me to make, again, no qualifications, no idea what I was doing, had a cheap Eastwood TIG welder and a cutoff wheel, and pioneered the first 4G swap. After collecting engine and trans parts, I did it in a weekend.
Wow.
Went from, it was a long weekend, not much sleep, but Friday night after work, started, and by Sunday it was started.
And now somebody can buy your kit and do it in a day, right?
Well, they should be able to, but they seem to usually take a couple of years. But they should be able to do it in a day, because we have 4gswap.com takes you to our Facebook page, where you can message me for mounts. Now, they have slowed down. I've probably done 50 sets of mounts over the last 10 years or whatever, 5 years. The interest has slowed down, so we don't keep them in stock. They're made to order, but been able to keep the prices the same that I started with, because everything's jigged up now, and it's actually cheaper now than it was when I first started making them. So there's nothing special, but they work, and they've been my mounts have gone 780s at almost 180 miles an hour in a 3000 GT with Garrett's record-setting 3000 GT chassis car.
Yep. After you kind of pioneered it, that was the move. After that was get a 4G6er in it and go fast.
Well, it was a move for a couple, people that were interested in racing, but I took quite a bit of crap from the internet. This was back in the forum days.
Yeah.
And which was, the best time to be alive. Well, we have so many better parts now with turbos, aluminum rods that you can daily drive, and ECUs that are just so much better. But the forum days were where I was at for car enthusiasts. The part selection are better. Yeah, I took quite a bit crap back in the day, even to personal threats. It was interesting, all because I put a 4G63 in the car, and I had no intentions of doing anything with it. Like, it was just for my own fun. The evolution of learning and experimenting and trying to be just for my own creativity. It wasn't, there was no viral thing. It wasn't to break the internet, do anything on TikTok or Instagram. It was just for my own personal enjoyment. And, it was apparently triggering to people before that was even a thing. And I look back at some of the forum posts, and I was quite calm in my response to people back then. And then after I ended up being, at one time it was the 5th quickest 3000 GT ever, and it was the quickest running 3000 GT in the world for over a year.
Yeah, I was going to say
Actually,
that's
2 or
probably what
3.
hurt people's feelings was how fast.
Well, that's when I got an attitude. Now, it hurt people's feelings just for doing it with
Right.
a stock 2.4 4G64 and a 14B turbo that made 200 horsepower, and that really got under people's skin for some reason. But then over time, when I just again, the evolution of just, hey, let's try this, let's see what we can go a little faster, and then it ended up going to got into doing the DSM shootout, which was fun, and did a local no prep race, which that was when I met my buddies Adam Hodson and Nick Taylor. They put on a no prep race at Wagler track in Lyons. I don't think Wagler owned it yet at the time, but then I was hooked. Oh my gosh, it was that's when all the money started being spent over the next 5 years after that. Yeah, that's after that is when I got the attitude, because now I had the results that so I spent 5 years getting shit on the internet, and no joke, public and private threats, and then it started having good results, and so then I would talk back with results.
Yeah, and now you see the 3000 GT list, has 3 4G63s in the top 10.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and mine was still, full interior, other than, had a cage and Kirkies for safety. But all stock glass, had a stereo system. I think when I ran the 965, I don't think I had air conditioning in it. Actually, I'm positive it didn't have air conditioning. That would be the one thing I didn't have. Everything else it had. Now, Garrett's, obviously, Garrett proved that you could build a lightweight 3000 GT.
Yeah.
So he got that car down at World Cup. It weighed 2520 with him in it, met the weight requirements, and it still had mostly stock glass. It had front and rear glass. It didn't even have a fiberglass hatch. I think he may have had carbon doors or something at the time. I can't recall.
Doors.
Yeah, but he spent a lot of time, not a lot of money, but he spent a lot of time and energy making that car light. And he was the first to really prove that you could get one down to a DSM race car weight. Now, there's still obviously like Red Demon and others that are, I would imagine 200-300 pounds less than that. I don't know for sure, but he proved you could do it. And
your swap is what set the 3000 GT into the 7 seconds.
It is 100%. At the time, so I did the swap. I already had the swap done. I met Garrett from, he was sent to me to do some tuning. And I met him, didn't know him, and started remote tuning his car when it was 6G.
Okay.
And then he was just he had such good vision and goals of what he wanted the car to be, fast. That's it. No compromise.
That's my style right there.
Yeah, no compromise. I want it to go fast. And he played around with the 6G stuff for a while and realized he was going to need a dog box and to do what he really wanted it to do, and decided to make the jump to 4G. And so I actually did the original swap in his car in my, home garage.
Oh, wow.
And it was just basically stock motor, small turbo, nothing too crazy, but I got it started driving and running. And then that was the car he learned on how to tune, how to fab. And it's pretty interesting.
For sure. And when you, I wanted to just go back to what you were talking about when you ran the 9.6 on that, after you did the 4G63 swap. That was on the FP Super 99, right?
Yeah, so that was a just a cast T3 manifold with a Super 99. It did need nitrous to spool that.
Okay.
I think I had a Precision Industries torque converter, number 7. The Ford you guys know will know what that is, and a little bit of nitrous to get it to launch. That was only 37 pounds of boost.
Wow.
And the car had seen 50 pounds of boost on the street and more nitrous. So, no draggies existed back then. So I can't say what it ran for sure. But logs, it was a low 9-second car per logs, and just logic.
And it was holding together very well, right? I mean, it seemed like you weren't really braking as much as people were back kind of in those times.
No, it's pretty. I had head gasket things at times, probably self-induced with too much timing or not enough fuel. So I went through some of that learning curve. The last rendition of the 4G that I sold, though, was extremely reliable. It was a 2-liter long rod that CAC Performance did some of it for me. And I think on that one, he just helped with part selection. So we did R&R, aluminum rods, Wiseco HT pistons. I had a Manley crank. It was 7-bolt block, half build. And I had a local machine shop that dealt with a lot of diesel stuff, local-ish, that we did an experiment on dual O-rings. So we had O-ring in the head and O-ring in the block that they kind of intersected. And I ran a $16 eBay composite head gasket and really had no issues with it. I had a nitrous backfire once that caused some issues in the car and did pop the head gasket, but I literally swapped it in an hour and back to 40, 50 pounds of boost.
Wow.
And that ended up working really well. I don't think it probably would have limits when you really start cranking the boost. Like guys are running now 70, 80, 90, 100 pounds of boost. Yeah. I don't know that would be the way to go. But for what I was doing, it was fantastic. Yes. I mean, I went from, 50 shot the spool to I was running 135 jet basically anytime I wanted, just for fun.
Wow. So with that working so well, Eric, what led you to then go to the LS?
So the auto, I didn't know enough about the automatics at the time, and so I started having issues with the automatic trans, and okay. I would have it out like every weekend. So I just drive around doing pulls for fun, and I was burning up third gear clutches. Ended up selling that trans to Garrett. I think that trans is the record-setting trans, to be honest. And I was having nothing but issues, and he determined that it was just the overdrive clutches, which also apply in some of the other gears, and I didn't know that. And he swapped the overdrive clutches and put in the third gear clutches, and then he didn't have any issues until he had to do further upgrades with billet baskets and stuff. But I was getting tired of the transmission issues and didn't have a good resource to send it to, and I'm like, I want a power glide. I was around more V8 racers at the time.
Yeah.
I was learning the benefits of a power glide. I'm like, I want a power glide. And I had thought about, a 4G power glide, and then I'm like, oh, what's this LS thing looks interesting. And I started with, I want to just, I learned about sloppy mechanics, where a lot of LS guys start, Mr. Matt Happel there, and there was a forum. So of course, I spent time looking at the forum posts, and I'm like, this is what I want, a 700 horsepower stock bottom end, cam and spring street car that should live forever. Well, that lasted about a couple of weeks before that escalated. But yeah, that's what started it. And the original power glide that I bought, was the one that I eventually sold with the part out on the car. So I had that Power Glide for a long time. Now it did. Mitchell Transmission is locally. They didn't build the Power Glide for me, but they serviced it, and we had some issues with again, self-induced. I ran it low on fluid one time at a drag and drive event, and got me through the event, but torched the pump, and so they would fix me up. But that was the nice thing about the Glide. I could take it to any number of performance transmission shops, and they could
Everyone's
take care
familiar
of me.
with that.
Yeah, but that's what started it. And when I first did the swap, I want this thing to handle. I don't want to be a straight line car, so I spent a ton of time researching, roll center, instant center, bump steer, all this stuff that I didn't know anything about before. And interestingly enough, the drift guys have a lot of good information on the internet. When you Google, I ended up getting back to the drift car builds because they're doing so much modification to their cars to get them to do what they want, that they're so far away from stock that they know more than the average just autocross guy or road course guy. So even though it may not be everybody's style, they understand the dynamics. And so then I learned from there and then applied it to my build. And so I built a custom chrome moly bolt-in front subframe, custom fully adjustable control arms, and it's got the V8 to fit.
So after you got the V8 in and had that working well in the rear-wheel drive setup, what I know you talked about it at first of making it back to all-wheel drive. What eventually motivated you to convert it back to all-wheel drive?
It was mostly just something that was an itch that I had to scratch.
Yeah.
So I was, again, way out of my comfort zone, cutting a hole in the firewall to fit a V8 transmission and building custom subframe and all of that. But once I got it done, even though it took way too many hours and way too much time away from family and friends to build it, the result was okay. When you look back, it's like, oh, wasn't that bad? And I could have done it with, I know enough now that I think I could have done it with all-wheel drive, which would have been really interesting. And so it's just this itch that was constantly there for years. And I eventually decided I had to do it. It ended up, I probably spent more time redoing the all-wheel drive than actually driving or racing all-wheel drive, because I was finding issues with, a ground clearance, with axle angles. Then obviously we talked about the front diff unlocking.
Yeah.
And all I spent more time fixing issues, re-engineering problems than I did really driving and racing it. The other thing too was, so that was the main reason. The second reason was I was doing a lot of no prep racing, the back of track style that Nick and Adam and Sean and Travis and all those guys that are from Northern Indiana that I started doing no prep races with and drag and drive events with. And so the back of track weight distribution and overall weight makes a big difference. And my car was still, too heavy and at the wrong place. And I wasn't at the time willing to really cut it up to change all of that dramatically. It would have been so much better off just buying a different chassis. And so I'm like, okay, what are my other options? Well, I could do all-wheel drive. Then the weight distribution doesn't matter as much. I knew that I would be limited in where I could run, but the cars that I would, even if I had to race all-wheel drive cars, I was only no rear-wheel drive. I was comfortable with that because I knew my car would end up around 3,400 pounds with me in it, and I would be racing, 2,500 pound DSMs, but they have a greater chance of breaking something in their drivetrain than I did with my setup. or I was racing, 4,000, 4,500 pound diesels, which made a ton of power, but also a chance to brake. And so I felt like I had an advantage against the all-wheel drive guys. Now, probably don't want to get into the all-wheel drive versus rear-wheel drive debate. There is an advantage in all-wheel drive at certain parts of the track, and it's not where all the rear-wheel drive think it is. It's not on the starting line. We are racing a front-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive car at the same time, and your suspension setup on the launch is 100% opposite with a rear-wheel drive car than a front-wheel drive car. And so you have to make compromises with an all-wheel drive car in the 60-foot. And so no matter the surface, a good setup rear-wheel drive car with the trophy truck suspension that they have on the front now and the weight distribution and weight transfer will out 60-foot an all-wheel drive car almost every single time on every single surface.
Yeah.
The difference, though, is once I was rolling, I needed more power. From 80 feet to 300 feet, it was game on. So I loved it. It was such a cat and mouse game because they would get out on me, and then I would have the power ramped in and catch up, and then it's like, do I have enough power to keep them from passing me again at the finish line, because I have a lot more weight usually, and I have more drivetrain loss and blah, 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 and a greater chance of breaking something. And so it was cat and mouse, and there's so many races that were like that. It's like, even like a big tire car get out on me, and then I'd catch up, and then they would, pass me at the end, and it was fun. I loved it. I think there is a way to make all-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive pretty evenly matched, with a couple of tweaks to rules. But for the promoters, it's not worth it, because there's not 100 all-wheel drive cars. But if you let in 2 or 3 all-wheel drive cars, you may lose, 20 or 30 rear-wheel drive guys that probably had no chance of winning anyway. But they know their car is not good enough to beat all-wheel drive, and they hope maybe somebody spins rear-wheel drive. Oh, that was the other advantage. I could get more aggressive with the tune first round and not completely flub it. I may lose 3/4 tenths of a second, but I'm not going to lose a second and a half. So I could get a lot more aggressive first round, and that is definitely an advantage. But yeah, it was good. I enjoyed the banter. It felt like the forum days. So I enjoyed the banter, and I raced where I could, and drove. Like I said, we took the car to Alabama. We've been, to drag and drive events all over the country, and
did you get as much hate with the LS as you did the 4G63?
That is a fantastic question, and the answer is no. It is bizarre.
Wow.
So the exact same people, not just the same type of people, literally the same people that absolutely hated the 4G loved the LS. It makes no sense at all. Zero. Bizarre. They should have hated it. Now, there were plenty of people that hated it. Oh, it's just another LS swap. Get creative. Boring, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, I had to re-engineer the entire car. Not very easy. If it was a rear-wheel drive car that had any number of dozens of rear-wheel drive cars where you can buy mount kits for $300 and pop it in, sure. But making a front-wheel drive chassis, LS rear-wheel drive based, and then adding four-wheel drive after that, not easy.
I mean, like you were saying, you took it all over the place. It must have been a very well set up, because you're number 66 on the all-time drag and drive event, so you did something right.
Yeah, what's funny with that is so at Sick Week, I ran an 50 with a 4. And that was on legit street tires, treaded drag radials. I call them street tires. They have a tread wear rating, and we drove track to track on those tires and never changed tires. Didn't have a trailer, didn't have anything. We fit everything we needed in the hatch of the 3000 GT. Me and my wife drove around Florida and Georgia at sick week.
Yeah.
And my cage though was only certed to 850. And so I wasn't getting after it. So I told you before, ran, up to 35. I've even had logs with 37, 38 pounds of boost. That pass was 19 pounds of boost in first gear and 13 pounds of boost in high gear to not break out of my cage cert. So people could do the math. It was a very quick all glass car. Yeah, it was still all glass. Now I did have fiberglass doors on it, but I put the stock glass in it so I could crank up the windows, roll them down. At various times it did have stereo in it. That pass it did not. And yeah, it was fun.
So you think if we could have got the Bill Hincher adapter in place and had a longitudinal mounted all-wheel drive 6G72 setup, the haters would still be upset?
I don't know. I have been in Bill Hincher's DMs for over 2 years asking for a 6G adapter. And so he was interested, but never came to fruition. And I didn't, it's probably, I know it was every year World Cup came around, I would get more motivated to bug him. And because they changed some of the rules, but at one time there was a class that I would have had an advantage in if I could have gotten the car light enough. And so, yeah, there was some interest from me to put a 6G in front of that Power Glide and all-wheel drive setup.
Yeah, that would have been definitely something to see.
You never know. It could still happen. Like you and I were talking before, 3000 GTs have been a part of my life since I was 20 years old, and been a part of my family's life. I have 4 kids, and it a nice punctuation on my life with 3000 GTs would be to take Garrett's spot away from him with a 6G.
And to, kind of shut up the haters of, oh, well, you can't, you got to have a 4G630 to go fast.
Yeah, it's, 6G has its place. For people that they have a running car and they want 500, 600, 700 horsepower, 6G. There's no reason to take out the motor.
Yeah.
If you want a race car that's cost effective and easy to work on, 4G all day long. If you want a 1,000+ horsepower car that's reliable and easy to work on, 4G all day long. Not to say that a 6G can't, but there is a cost and maintenance difference there for most people. But yeah, they both have their place, and there's really, I'm not a 6G hater. People think that I am because I've had a 4G and an LS. I just have done so much of both and been around so many fast cars. Maybe not myself with an uber fast 6G, but been around so many of them that I understand their strengths and weaknesses and pros and cons of any of it. Same with all-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive. Now I can't say much about front-wheel drive. I don't have the experience there, but yeah, there's a place for both, and it's just what people want.
Were you surprised, Eric, whenever, I think it was 2 years ago, you did the 6G versus 4G bounty, and we didn't have a single person make the attempt?
No, I wasn't surprised. I put up $500, I believe, right, Josh?
Yeah.
Myself. That was my own. Like, I don't. This isn't. Yes, I have the Family Man Racing YouTube channel. It's not monetized. We don't have enough. We don't have enough views. I don't make any money on that. I make almost nothing on doing 4G swap mounts for people. That was my personal money that I put up, and I knew it was safe money. And we got like a couple $1,000s put into that.
Yeah,
4G versus 6G.
Almost up to 5,000.
Jeez, that's crazy. Now, one area that I did, so Garrett was still racing his car at the time, or was thinking about it, and I did mess up because he is the one that did. He had the record. He put in the work on the car, and 4G isn't an easy button. You still have to make the car work, put in the hours, do the tuning, fix the car. Yeah. He had that at World Cup. He had that transmission out a couple of times, and that his pass. He was testing some things with tuning. His record-setting pass, he accidentally launched in second gear instead of first gear. So the car is now gone. He sold it, and it was parted out. It's still out there, and someone's building over the last few years. But there was definitely more in it. But he called me. I was like, "Hey, what the hell? You have the whole world against me, and you're not doing anything for me." I'm like, "Good point." So then we created the reverse bounty, that if no one beat his time that year, then anybody that chose to be in the reverse bounty, then he would get the money. Yeah. So if somebody, as an example, put up, like me, $500, and if no 6G beat his record, then I checked into the reverse bounty, I would give Garrett the 500. Now, he ended up selling his car that year and did not race it. So he got nothing. That's his own fault.
Yeah. He was in it to win it for sure, because he had no challengers.
Yeah, and I knew it was safe money. That is the problem with the platform. The car is awesome. I love them. I love how they look. The motor is fine too. And the problem with the platform is the people. A lot of what the internet has coined, not swingers. There's a lot of talkers, but not a lot of doers. Yeah. And the doers are few and far between, and those are considered legends. Matt Monet back in the day. The most impressive car on that list to me is a 970 at 151. It's a stock bottom end 6G with some DR800 or DR1000 turbos. I can't remember exactly, but it's a stock bottom end 6G in a 3,000 pound race car chassis that ran 950s, and that's an impressive car to me. He's a legend. Ray Pompina,
the Matt Monet Stealth.
Yeah, exactly. The white Stealth. Eventually, I think it's the same car that he has the 6G72 record with 870 or something like that, if I recall. And then Nelson. I mean, he was, when he was campaigning his car. So he has the 6G record 857 with an automatic. When he was campaigning that, some of the automatic parts didn't exist yet, and so I think his car would have went faster. We didn't have. I don't believe the transfer gears, the straight cut transfer gears, were available yet. The transfer cases didn't have the Magnus gear option that we have now, and the billet gears, or the billet case, and there's an upgraded tail shaft option as well too. The tail shaft is a toothpick and a stock automatic transfer case.
Oh yeah.
And so there was a lot of parts that were probably just getting developed then. I know the Magnus gears weren't available yet because that's new. So that's an impressive car. It has, by his account though, he stated $500,000 in that car.
Wow. I believe
so that's crazy. So I don't know where.
Wasn't all the carbon stuff that he had, that was all custom made carbon stuff. That stuff didn't exist on the shelf yet.
And his chassis, so this was a bought, not built car, and that's fine, right? He had a Hogan intake. They make some bad mofo intakes for V8s. He had them build an intake for 6G. His chassis was done by, I can't remember who now, but it was, a legit, race car shop. They built his chassis. He had custom subframes, tubular subframes built back then with adjustability. They were all one-off pieces by top, level places. At least, he hoped that they were.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's wild.
Especially
it's impressive stuff.
I mean, as much as anybody, but if you had that same, I would say setup. Let's just talk about the intake, the fuel system that he had, those twin GT40s. I mean, if you had that now with the 6G75 and MyVec, there's no telling what that car would be capable of.
Well, maybe one day we'll find out.
Yeah. Do you know if Nelson still has that car?
No. I know where so he had two cars. He had what he called the street car, which actually has the record, and then he had a race car that was building on the side. They were both white, and Nelson was kind of tight-lipped on some things, but he's totally out of the 3000 GT race car game. He's smarter than all of us. He's enjoying life and not sucked into race cars. I don't know him personally. I see him post on Facebook sometimes, and it is nothing about cars. He was he made the forums fun back in the day. Him and Matt would go at it, but not knowing him, just an outside observer, he seems a lot happier in life now. And
he's one of the smart ones.
Yeah, same with Matt. Matt still sells some bolt-on turbos, but Matt's out of that game and enjoying his the life with his son. And so yeah, they're smart and got out of it.
Yeah,
those are the legends.
I hit Matt up and asked him if he wanted to be on the podcast, and he left me on red. And I thought, okay, well, I guess that's a no.
Yeah, he's not about that life anymore. He had at times messaged me here and there. He was interested in the auto trans.
Yeah.
So he still has some of his old cars, and he had thought about for his son setting up a pretty simple DR750 automatic trans car that he and his son could race. And the problem with W4A33 trans and a 6G is the torque. And so he would, even though it wouldn't be a high horsepower car, it would be making similar torque to all the record setting automatic DSMs. And so my advice was he was going to need every upgrade available to make it a reliable car. And it starts to add up. He could try with some of the basics and it probably worked for a while, but if he really turned it up, and my advice to him was just to spend the money but again, no guarantees. It's a lot of torque.
This episode of the MitsuTimes podcast is brought to you by Boosted Fabrication. They create custom parts for most Mitsubishi vehicles, parts stronger and lighter than OEM, such as cross members, engine mounts, bumper supports, and many others, including custom parts by request. Boosted Fabrication builds all parts to order using only high-quality materials, bonded together with expert precision, and finished to not only last, but to look good doing it. Check out all the products they have to offer at boostedfabrication.com. So, Eric, let's talk about the 4G63 cars, or the Mitsubishis, I guess, in your life, even though one of them isn't a Mitsubishi per se. We still have a 4G63 3000 GT.
Yes, my son, he graduated high school this year. It was his first car. It's a 92 red 3000 GT VR4 that has 95, 96 bumper and stuff like that on it. So it looks newer. No stock fog lights, so it's not a real 3000 GT. Yeah, we should probably talk about that. But so we have that. It's a stock 7-bolt, 100% stock with a 16G, E85, flex fuel, MS3 Pro. I did I took a universal wiring harness and did it for that pretty poorly, but it works. He's driven that all over the country. He did Rocky Mountain Race Week. He didn't race, but he was a road weeker. So he drove it to and from Colorado, did the whole thing, had a blast. His friends are starting to get into more, horsepower, and so he wants to jump into that too. So he's been saving up money. He's going to do a pretty basic 2.3 stroker and get a bolt-on FP turbo, probably like an FP Green, I think is what he's looking at. So wants a little more power, and we'll do the basics. We'll do a shift kit and some Kigley clutches in the trans, and should be good for him. But yeah, he daily drives it. It had a road. I bought it as a roller, barely a roller, and it had a like a road race cage in it. And since he daily drove it, we cut it down so that it's essentially just like a 6/8 point cage now. So it'd be good for, I think, 9.0, no, 10.0, 10.0. Yeah, which is plenty. Like so we have that. My daughter has, like I said, I have 4 kids. One is sensible, and she drives a Ford Focus that gets like 40 miles to the gallon, and doesn't have to work on it. And then then my son's another daughter has a 95 3000 GT SL automatic, of course, because we love them, and just stock. She has the best stereo in the family. It cranks. And then my 10-year-old doesn't have one yet, but he's been going to races since he's been born, so he's interested in something when he gets older. And then I have full circle. I have a 1992 Toyota MR2 that I bought as, again, barely a roller, and it now has a 4G63 bolted into it. CAC Performance is doing a long block for me because I'm short on time. The goal is to drive it to Sick Week in February, and I just started on it basically a month ago. And and so the 4G is bolted in there. I made mounts. I had to modify the frame a little bit to make room for the auto trans. FuelTech FT550 that I took out of the 3000 is 80% wired right now, and bought a lot of cool parts that exist that didn't exist before. So Wilhelm Raceworks or Wilhelm Racing, can't remember the name, but bought his suspension geometry kit where it really improves the geometry on these cars. Adds a lot of caster and various other stuff that he figured out, so I don't have to. But his coilover kit, geometry kit, Willwood brakes for it. It's going to be, I intend to daily drive it, like legit daily drive it, but it'll have like a FP customized turbo to bolt on, but planning on like Zona center cartridge, probably around 600-700 wheel horsepower. Be plenty.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, so like I said, I owned a MR2 in high school / college, and then 3000 GT in college, and those are the cars that I play with now.
Now I know when we met up a few months ago to I think you were buying a head from me. You were saying that your kind of only regret with the 3000 GT was now it was not enjoyable as much as it was when you could drive it. Is that kind of the plan with the MR2 is just to kind of drive it and not make it into something serious?
Yeah, I mean, the 3000, my biggest, I like them to be quiet when I drive them, and the 3000 ended up with fender exits and not a full exhaust because I had the radiator in the rear. And, I put eBay, fart can silencers in the exhaust if I had to drive long distances, but and that tamed it down, but it wasn't easily removed. You have to pull over and take them out. So yeah, the MR2 tend to have I have a full exhaust that I bought for it with resonators and I bought a bunch of, it was missing some AC components, so I bought a bunch of AC lines and components. The intention is to have AC and all of the amenities. Unfortunately, I see the record. Boosted Boys have it. It's fast. He just broke his own record, which made it more challenging. But I know that a 4G auto would be a great setup to take the MR2 record, but I don't really want to do 25.5 or whatever cage and all that stuff. So it probably will never be a record setting car. And for no prep racing, I do intend to do that. Probably hard tire, and even 700 horsepower in hard tire racing isn't really enough. But and then the wheelwood brake kit probably won't allow 15-inch wheels, so it'll be at a big disadvantage. But I'll still do it for fun.
Okay. So, is there any kind of goals with quarter mile goals with the MR2? I'm sure you don't want to go after your 866 drag and drive record, right?
No, and the drag and drive that I have now is 850.
Oh,
yeah. Well, I averaged 866.
Oh, that's what 60. It was. Okay.
Yeah. So I averaged 866, one and done at every track, just for fun and not break out of the cage cert. With MR2, yeah, I mean, it'll probably run nines just for fun. But at Sick Week, I won't have a cage, won't have anything, no roll bar. So I'll be limited to 1150. We'll probably enter it in a 12.0 class and just, again, one and done and just have fun.
Yeah.
It's nice to be able to just one and done, hang out with your friends, watch the fast cars, get back to the hotel, have some beers, not have to work on the car. So it doesn't matter how reliable you make these. You can plan as much as you want, and if you're pushing, you're gonna find something that either just wear and tear you have to fix, or parts failure, tuning failure, whatever. But yeah, it's intend to have a nice easy trip again. Now I say that, and it worked last year, so I'll probably end up on the side of the road repairing MR2. A 12-second MR2.
Goodness.
But yeah, that's just bolt on turbo and have some fun.
So you talked about Sick Week and some no prep events. Is there any other events that you plan to take this car out to next year? Maybe the shootout or something like that?
Yeah, so Robert Young, founder of Force Performance Turbos, campaigns hasn't in a while, but he has the one lap Galant VR4. And we have some friendly competition that we've been talking some smack for a while now. And so the goal is for us to both be at the DSM shootout next year and do a max effort competition. So max effort, for most of these guys probably know on your podcast, but it's autocross and drag. It's autocross weighted. So, if it's a 40-second autocross, and then if you have a 10-second car, you add your 10 seconds to that, 50 seconds, and that's your time for max effort. And so you can't make up the difference. If you have a straight line car that can't make autocross, you can't make up the difference in drag. So has to do both. And so that's, so we have a little friendly competition there. Again, that'll be for fun. I don't think the 4G MR2 technically can compete in max effort because it's not a Mitsubishi chassis, but we'll have our own little competition. So we'll do that, do Sick Week, Rocky Mountain Race Week. Matt and June are planning on doing their 2.0 event in the Rockies this year, in the fall. And so the heat has been getting to me, which is why I like AC. And the summer event, I'm not sure that I want to do that one this year. But if we can do the fall, and if I can get in, that would be fantastic to be able to drive a T-top car through the mountains with a bunch of race cars. Would be so fun.
Heck yeah. Yeah, Chris,
and then
Revenge was talking about that Death Valley race week. That sounds miserable.
No chance do I want to do that. You can do that one. And then, no prep stuff. The local tracks to me that Decker Boys has a new track that they put together. We've done 2 of those events. Happy and Limpy put those on. Kentucky Cash Days. That's the ones where you'll see a bunch of wrecks. My wife is not a fan of that track, but the environment is so awesome. The owners of the track are just good old boys putting money into track when everyone else is selling their tracks, and they built this from scratch. Really cool, and it is slick. So we'll probably do anyone that they have like a hard tire that I could get into. I'll do those if I'm not traveling for work. Wagler, Jeremy Wagler in Lyons, Indiana. He has a great facility, puts on good events. So I like to support him whenever I can. And then the street racing channel, Bill and Billy have been doing some daily driver events, and that would be something perfect for the MR2. Again, probably not going to be competitive if I can't get the right tire on it. But it's something that I will get out and enjoy and be fun.
Heck yeah. So Eric,
and drive it.
Yeah, and drive it and hopefully keep it together.
Yeah.
So Eric, you've been into these cars a long time, like we talked about a few times. You have as much experience with the 3000 GT platform as anybody. If someone out there, they have one, they want to start building, or they're looking to get into the platform, what advice would you give them for their build?
So the first thing for anybody, doesn't matter what platform it is to sit down and really think about what your goal is. And this is easier said than done. And do as I say, not as I do. But if you start with a goal, then all of your mod selection and your money is much better spent because you know what you're going after. So I get people ask me all the time, hey, what turbo should I get for this motor? Well, that's an open-ended question.
Right.
What do you want to do with the car? One, you don't pick a turbo without knowing your horsepower goal. That's the first place you start. But then why is that goal? So I get with the 3000 GT crowd all the time. I want to make 1,000 horsepower. Okay, great. Why? If it's just to say you make 1,000 horsepower, I mean, shit, manipulate a dyno and print out a dyno chart that says you make 1,000 horsepower just so you can be cool on the internet.
Yeah.
what is that 1,000 horsepower for? Do you want to road race and you need that to be in the time attack class or whatever? You want to do 8 mile no prep. You want to do quarter mile. You want to go after the record. Well, those are what's the weight of the car. There's just so many things that go into modifying the cars that people don't think about. And you go down, and what happens with especially the 3000 GT crowd is you get a lot of partsless racers. They own the parts. The car may not run, but they have I have a 700 horsepower build. Well, no, you have 700 horsepower turbos and a car on jack stands for the next 5 years because you don't know why you're building a 700 horsepower car.
Yeah.
If you just want to daily drive the car and have an enjoyable car that you don't want to, worry about popping a head gasket, then build a 500-600 horsepower, TD04 or TD05 car and enjoy it. Don't get wrapped up into the internet. A 500 horsepower street car is still a very fun and fast car if you legitimately drive it daily. So that's the only advice, because from there it sets everything else. Is an automatic or manual the right way? Is a 4G or 6G the right way? Which 6G, which 4G, which turbo, what fuel, what ECU? All of that's driven by what is your goal with the car.
So have a goal and stick to it.
Yeah, that's the hard part for most people is having a goal, and then sticking to it is the hard part for me. you get build creep a lot,
especially when you're in a build and you see parts you didn't know existed or new parts coming out.
Well, it's the FOMO, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, but the thing is why? All of a sudden you have $20,000 in parts in a car that's still on jack stands and doesn't even hit your original goal. So it's that's my biggest advice. And again, easier said than done, but that'll make you enjoy the process and the results much more.
So Eric, where can people go and keep up with your builds and see your 3000 GT? I know you have a lot of videos of the race week coverages, and even not even you, just the racing channel and all the other stuff. Where can people find all that?
Yeah, the best spot would be our YouTube channel, Family Man Racing. Family Man, all one word, space racing. If you search for that, you'll find us. That's the best spot. It's vlog style mostly, and it's not, it's nothing special, but I like to keep people up to date on my thought process, on what I'm doing and why. And we find that there's a core group of people that really enjoy it. And it's mixed with, what I think of as kind of boring build video, because it's just me and maybe one of my sons will pop in and help. And then mixed with the racing videos. So racing obviously has a bit more action. And then people tend to enjoy our drag and drive videos. Yeah. We because we're simple with our videoing, we're iPhone YouTubers. We put out our content on drag and drive events almost real time. So at Sick Week, we had sometimes they were same day. So my wife and I were doing video. She would edit while we were at the track, and sometimes we were able to get it out that same night. And at worst, they'd be the next morning. And so those videos always do, well for us comparatively, because you're literally along for the ride. I like doing those. And even though we have a small channel, when I was thinking about doing drag and drive with the 3000, I would stay up and watch every drag week video that I could find and loved like being a part of it. And if you feel like you're along for the ride with these guys. And so I now that I get to participate myself, I want to try to replicate that and allow other people to ride along with us. And the goal for that is to get other people doing it. It is the camaraderie that you have at these events is hard to replicate in any other part of life. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I love the race week ones. I know what you're talking about. I hate filming something on a GoPro and then having to go back, connect to the GoPro, pull it off, do all that stuff. Yeah, I can see how that would be easier.
Yeah, I mean, we just iPhones and iMovie, and we do it on the fly. Some of our other videos, we obviously will put a little bit more time into the editing, but yeah, that's the best place there. I do post quite a bit on Facebook, pictures and updates at times. We have the 4gswap.com Facebook page. We have the Family Man Racing Facebook page, which I don't do a lot on. And then Instagram, mostly like we'll do some racing clips for the reels there. But yeah, those are the spots.
Heck yeah.
And you can still find me talking shit on 3si.org on the forum.
That's where I'll be. Come find me.
Yeah, if you want some good banter, I do actually. That's a good point too, though. Even though the forums are almost dead, they're on life support. They're coming back. There's a heartbeat. I have like a 200-page build thread on the 3000 GT. So from start to finish, everything, a lot, and there's some banter at times. There's pictures, and I'm doing the same thing for the MR2. I'm keeping it up to date. There's a handful of people that follow along, but I do it for two reasons. One, in case I forget what I did, I can at least go back and remember what modification or what I did here and there. And then other is, you get so many private messages, DMs, etc. on, well, how did you do this or how did you do that? And I can't possibly answer all of those. Yeah. Like there's no way I can do that. So people can go to the YouTube channel or they can go to the build thread. And it may sound a bit harsh, but if you can't spend the time to go read a build thread, then don't message me. Yeah. Because and you probably can't do the build then either. If you can't put in effort. So
if you can't take the time to read how someone else has done it, then you shouldn't attempt it.
And if somebody does all of that and comes with specific questions, I always answer them. But there's so few people that actually do that. And because the people that do that, I know they're serious and they put in the time to actually think about it. And now they have specific questions for their build that's specific to their goals. And then if I have the information or have some advice, 100%, I answer every one of those. But if you're just messaging me, hey, how did you do this? Holy cow, really? Got to spend the last 5 years of my life DMing you?
Right. So finally, Eric, I always give people opportunity to, give a shout out to anybody who's helped them get where they are, help them get their car where it is, and kind of helped them out along the road.
Holy cow, it's a long list, but I mentioned a lot of them already. My family, super supportive. My wife is more competitive than me, so I have to hesitate taking her to the track sometimes because
it'll cost you.
It'll cost me, and they're hard on me if I don't win. But my wife and my kids are been very supportive. It's been such a cool experience for us to enjoy this hobby together. So that'd be my first. My father was into performance stuff, but he has a mechanic background, and so He has taken an interest and went on one of the drag and drive events with me. Then I already mentioned Don, CAC Performance. He really gave me the courage to dig into stuff that I knew nothing about because I knew he could bail me out. Robert Young, Force Performance. He's been a big support on advice, build advice. He's just a wealth of knowledge across multiple platforms. I have text chains with some good friends that I've met over the years through this hobby. So we already mentioned, Garrett Chastain and what he's doing. He's now at Fuel Tech. My buddies Zach and Jake are always encourage me to spend more money. And then in the no prep world, Nick Taylor, he's got Nicky Bobby Inc. on YouTube, and Adam Hodson, who has oh my gosh, why am I totally blanking now? Mac TV. There we go. Mid America Customs on YouTube. And I'm sure I'm missing some others, but those are the ones that keep me spending money on a regular basis.
Well, Eric, again, it's been an absolute pleasure to get a chance to talk to you and to hear your story about not just your 3000 GT, but your other projects in the works. And I can't wait to see, what you're going to do with this MR2, what it's capable of, and to see some more projects in the future.
Awesome, Josh. Appreciate what you do with the MitsuTimes.org. It's really cool to be able to go back and reference and see, and it's keeping the enthusiasm going for this platform that's 30 years old at this point.
Absolutely, I appreciate it so much. I've had your support since day one, so it's really helped me keep the page going. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Josh.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure talking to you, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.